Now this one's very hard to prove because it's very squidgy. It's more a matter of opinion. We're proving that something is ethical or unethical, good or bad from a moral standpoint, great, awesome, worst. These kinds of things are a matter of opinion and perspective, and so it's really hard to come to a consensus on that type of argument.
So wait, that's value?
That's value.
How is that value? Like why would that be labeled under
It's
value?
about your values,
Okay.
really, is what it comes down to. Like for example, some people value freedom very highly, and other people value conserving the environment very highly, and so we clash over those environmental issues because we've got this difference of perspective. It's very hard to resolve. It's not like giving enough facts will change anybody's mind. And finally is a question of policy. Question of policy is anytime we're trying to decide on a course of action, what should or should not be done. So regardless of the topic, if we're talking about what action to take, it is a question of policy. So let's take a look. Is this fact, value, or policy? Phthalates are a class of chemicals that cause hormone imbalances in fish and humans.
Fact.
Question of fact. Very good. That was the easy one. We must ban the use of phthalates in all forms of production. Policy. Good. Which means this one's value. Companies that continue to use phthalates are behaving unethically. Be a question of value. Okay? Any questions about those?
We weren't supposed to write all that, right?
No.
Because you flipped the.
They're just examples.
Okay.
And you will see some more examples.
Okay.
So once we've got our speech focused, then we need to start thinking about how to adapt to the audience. That is, how to appeal to them. So these are the classical appeals, which you may have run across before. Aristotle came up with these. We've been relying on them a long, long time. Really good thing to know. Because you'll be seeing it again. Be too subtle. So we've got logos, pathos, ethos, and mythos. Anyone want to take a guess what logos is? Logic and reason. Yeah. Logic and reason. So that's your argument. Pathos, think pathetic. Because what we're doing is we're playing on your emotions. It's all about emotion. So pathos is making us feel something. So those commercials you see for energy drinks where you just see people jumping around and sweating and then drinking and going, "Yeah!" It's pure emotion. Those commercials make me crazy. I like little logos in my commercials, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
So that's pathos. Ethos, this one's a little squidgy. Ethos. You can think ethics, but it's more than just ethics. It's about demonstrating that you truly care for your audience. So it's about your sincerity, their belief in your character, and your credibility. That is, the audience has to believe that you know what you're talking about. So sincerity, character, credibility. I don't know why my allergies make me dry mouth. Or maybe it's my allergy medication. Something's giving me dry mouth. And finally, mythos. We kind of discourage people from using mythos these days because mythos is calling on cultural stories, which doesn't work so well with the multicultural audience. So if I were to refer to Babe the Blue Ox and Paul Bunyan, That's not only American, but probably old people. A lot of young people don't even know what I'm talking about. If I talk about George Washington, never tell a lie, that's a cultural story. If I talk about the Statue of Liberty and what that represents, that's a very American kind of story. So mythos can be very effective, but only if you've got a homogeneous, culturally speaking, audience. So mostly we focus on these three: logos, pathos, ethos. Any questions? Let's look at some more modern types of appeals. If you've taken a psychology class, chances are good you've been exposed to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which basically says we have different levels of needs. You know, we've got our real basic physical needs like sleep and safety and air, kind of important. And then we've got more social needs, we've got more psychological needs, and up at the top we've got a need for self-actualization, so a need to reach our full potential. You just have to figure out what your audience needs, and then show them how what you're persuading them of will fulfill those needs. Next, we've got the unfortunately named need for harmony. They call this a harmony appeal, but what you're really doing is you're causing disharmony in your listener. You're causing cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is that discomfort you feel when you believe one thing and then somebody shows you evidence that that's not true. So if you love Trump and somebody provides evidence that that's not, in fact, he's not really a good president, you might feel a lot of cognitive dissonance. I felt that when the whole story broke about Bill Clinton and a certain intern. When that stuff broke, I had a lot of cognitive dissonance going on because I liked him. I liked him a lot, and then all of a sudden, he was just a dirty old man. I don't want to talk about the cigars. Well, that messed me up. So cognitive dissonance is that discomfort we feel. Now, you have to be really careful using this strategy because the goal is to make us feel uncomfortable enough to question our beliefs, but not so uncomfortable that we just shut you down. So again, if we use Trump as our example, if you are a very staunch supporter of Trump, or if you're very hard against Trump, and someone gives you contrary information, chances are good you're just going to ignore it or dismiss it or tell yourself that person's crazy. You're not going to let yourself process it. So too much cognitive dissonance can be very harmful. You have to hit just the right level. Tricky. This next one's easy though, gain. Basically telling us what we're going to get out of it. So if you're talking about recycling, we all know it's going to be more work and more effort to sort everything out and all this stuff, and you got to tell us what we get out of it to focus on the benefits. And finally, another tricky appeal is commitment. Here you have to gauge your audience's commitment to thinking about your subject. When I first began teaching, I made the mistake of overestimating my students' commitment to learning about my subject. And so I could go really deep into a topic, I could talk about it, but their eyes would just glaze over and they'd fade out on me. They didn't have the enthusiasm for the subject that I did. And I had to learn how to hit that sweet spot where I'm pushing you just a little bit, but I'm not pushing you so hard you shut down. Try not to go too deep if your audience isn't as enthusiastic as you are. So yeah, if you're doing a speech on sports, tone it back, please. I do my best, but ooh, not my area. You can tell them that, please. So next comes sound argument and reasoning. I can't teach you how to argue in a class. I could start if we had a whole semester, but really, if you want to learn how to think logically, you've got to take a rhetoric class or a philosophy class or 2 or 3 or a dozen to really get good at it. Don't make the mistaken assumption that humans are naturally logical. We are not. We in fact think logarithmically. We use estimates, probabilities, and assumptions, not logic. So if you want to argue logically, it's going to take some effort on your part. There are 3 basic parts of a logical argument: claims, evidence, and warrants. So most of the main points of your speech are going to be claims. Claims are assertions of fact, value, or policy. So example, I can make the claim Joe is a man, and I can probably prove that. And then I can make the claim that all men are mortal. Though I have to rethink that one because we seriously think we have an immortal. I call her a woman, but she never matured, so she's really a girl. She's in her 30s now, but she never grew up. They think she's never gonna die, but she's also a baby for her whole life, so that's a little uncomfortable. We make these assertions. They should support our central idea. And then we have to go on to prove them. We have to prove them. And a lot of students make the mistake of making assumptions or making these statements that they just assume everyone accepts and never proving them. You've got to be careful about that. We all love kids, right? Yeah, exactly. Don't assume everyone's supporting your claim. You're going to have to prove that one.
They can borrow mine.
Oh, that'll cure them. I love other people's kids.
Yeah.
It's easy to love somebody else's. So then we need our evidence. We got to support our claims. So this is our stats, our statistics, our research, our examples. And here remember that credibility and trustworthiness is a key. So when I say all men are mortal, I've got to prove it. And using statistics, I can at least argue that just about all men are mortal. With the very, very rare exception. Now, one mistake a lot of people make is they don't go on to the third element. The warrants, the reasoning that links together the evidence and the claim. If I say, Joe is a man, and then I prove it, there's my evidence, and I say all men are mortal, and I prove it, there's my evidence, the warrant is saying, therefore, Joe must be mortal. So there's my reasoning that links it all together. Don't neglect to explain your reasoning to us. Don't assume that just because you're presenting the evidence, we're going to draw the same conclusions you did. Take us all the way through your reasoning process. Of course, the warrants are also where we run into trouble, folks. Let me introduce you to the logical fallacy. Now, I do refer to the book here, but you know what? Just go on Wikipedia and type in logical fallacy. There'll be a list, a big list. There's a lot of possible fallacies out there. A logical fallacy is an error in logic. It's a statement that seems logical, but actually isn't. And the error happens in the warrant portion of the argument. So, let me share some claims with you. August, ice cream sales spike. I can prove this. Highest sales of ice cream in August. In August, murders also spike. Now here's the warrant. Therefore, ice cream causes murder. Now that's actually a post hoc fallacy. It's a very common error. Because A happens and B happens, we assume that A causes B. But it's not actually that simple. Of course, we know that murders and sales of ice cream are both strongly affected by heat. So there's actually a third factor there we weren't taking into account. So that logical fallacy can slip in there without you realizing it. Now, here's the really nasty thing about logical fallacies. It's very, very hard for us to spot our own logical fallacies. In fact, people who are experts who have studied critical thinking for years still use logical fallacies and have trouble seeing them. So it's really better to have somebody else you trust, somebody who thinks clearly, read through and spot any of your logical fallacies. It's really hard to do it ourselves. Because the human brain's funny that way. Okay, you with me?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm going to help you all out. And I'm going to tell you how to organize your speech. I want you to organize it using Monroe's motivated sequence. So this is a sequence of presentation that's designed to follow our own natural decision-making process. And it's so effective that a lot of commercials and infomercials actually follow these steps. So first you get our attention. So that's the beginning of the infomercial when you see a man with a briefcase and a nice suit on. He's walking to his meeting and he's carrying a cup of coffee and someone jostles his arm and boom, he's got coffee on his shirt. Oh no, oh no. Need then describes the problem. So here is Joe. He's got a meeting in 5 minutes. He's got coffee all over his shirt. He doesn't have a spare shirt in his briefcase. He can't run to the laundry. He doesn't have enough time. Oh, what is he going to do? So in the needs step, we talk about what the problem is, how long it's been going on, how it affects us, what it costs us, stuff like that. Describe the problem. Then we move on to the satisfaction step, which is where we give the solution to the problem. How do we satisfy this need? How do we fix it? Well, here's my magic stain erasing stick. Just keep this in your briefcase. And let me show you how it works. This is that portion of the commercial. So we'll show you, it takes just 5 minutes and use it like this, and that's how it works. So you talk about the solution, how it works, how long, what it'll cost, what it'll take to implement it, stuff like that.